Aliana is back with some truly buzzworthy stories.
Yeah, I told you in strange news, and these stories are a little, well, I guess one of them is more strange than the other. But you know, we go through extreme lengths for our phone, right? Sometimes we do things that we wouldn't normally do. We risk our lives on the road when texting. Don't do that. And apparently we risk our lives among rocks when hiking. At least that's what happened to an Australian woman who was stuck upside down between two boulders for 7 hours. Now, this picture shows what rescuers were seeing when they were there. They saw just her feet in the air between the rocks. Now, the woman was walking with some friends in the country town. There you see her feet there. That's what they saw. They were walking in the country town of Laguna. She dropped her phone, so when she tried to go and get it, she slipped face first into a crevice, hanging there for hours. Her friends tried to free her, but they couldn't. They called for help. It took crews hours to rescue her. She was only scratched and bruised up, never got that phone back. Unfortunately, the phone is still down under.
Wonder if it still has batteries.
Not at this point.
The Amazon has had its worst forest fires in 2 decades. More than 62,000 square kilometers have been burned this year already, an area bigger than countries like Sri Lanka or Costa Rica. Known as the lungs of the planet, the world relies on the Amazon to absorb a lot of its carbon dioxide. But these fires mean it's now emitting record amounts itself. Our South America correspondent, Ione Wells, has this report.
This is the Amazon rainforest, but it barely resembles its name. Trees warped and blackened like burnt matchsticks. Clouds not full of rain for the continent, but smoke that is choking it. On the front lines, indigenous firefighters. It's their land burning. We say things spread like wildfire because as soon as one is put out, another pops up. For these volunteers, the fight is personal.
If these fires continue, we, the indigenous people, will no longer have life, because today it is killing the plants. In a while, it will be us, because we inhale so much. It is a very aggressive fire that really kills everything that comes its way.
As we speak, she spots another plume of smoke. They'd only just finished putting out fires there. The battle feels constant.
The majority of these fires are arson, people who want to invade the land. Other fires are natural, but that's rare.
A disaster it is. Natural it isn't. Deforestation has slowed in recent years under the new government, but despite attempted crackdowns, lawlessness is still rife. Loggers, miners, farmers use fires to clear land. At the heart of their argument, a belief land should be productive, not protected. This farmer bought his land legally a long time ago. He can understand why Amazonian farming is booming.
I think it is due to the growth of the population that has increased planting up here. It rained well here. I believe if you're working within the law, there's no problem here. It is a place that provides food. It is a state that can produce a lot. So I think there is still a lot of area to be cultivated here in Amazonas.
The fires are criminal, but made worse by Brazil's worst ever drought, caused by the El Niño weather phenomenon and climate change. This is supposed to be the Madeira River, a tributary of the Amazon. This is what communities must do to get water now.
It's the worst drought I've ever seen in my entire life. It has brought a lot of consequences. The absence of food on the riverside dwellers' table, the fish are gone, there are elderly people with chronic illnesses, who have to make this journey.
The impact on the community here is clear, but this matters for everyone. The world relies on the Amazon to absorb a lot of its carbon. And as you can see from the smoke in the sky here, it's now emitting record amounts itself.
Life here knows the cost of that, already falling prey to the rainforest's new greatest predators. Ione Wells, BBC News in the Amazon.
Well, let's speak now to Tessa Azevedo, a Brazilian forest scientist and engineer at the Climate Observatory. That's a Brazilian environmental lobby group. Thank you very much for joining us today. And tell us more. Ione spoke about it a bit in her report, but tell us more about the reasons that there are so many wildfires this year in the Amazon.
Yeah, the first thing to look at is that there is El Niño, which is a phenomenon that increase the temperature of the water in the Atlantic, in the Pacific, and this is particularly strong this year. But it's in conjunction also with a very big effect on the climate change in the Amazon, that we are bringing a very, very, very dry season. It's like that's the driest season we have on record since the last 60 years when it's started to be record. So this creates a condition for a fire, but fire only starts if you have ignition. Like if you have somebody starting the fire in the Amazon. The fire don't start naturally in the Amazon, except on a very occasional ways when you have lightning, which is not the case right now. So what we are having now is this effect of the very, very dry season with fire that is spreading on a different pattern that previous years. So just to have an idea, the figures that were presented on the just minutes ago at 16 million hectares of fires. This is not fire on forest. Forest is just part of that. So it's about 40% of this area was on forest. But in previous years, the proportion of forest that has been on fire was about 15%. So what is changing this year is that not only the total area of fire is increasing, but the proportion of area that's happening on forest is increasing due to the dry conditions.
So much more forest being affected, and the phrase lungs of the planet tells us, doesn't it, just how important the Amazon rainforest is to try to deal with the climate crisis. Now, the previous Brazilian president, Jair Bolsonaro, was seen as a skeptic on the issue of the climate crisis. His successor, President Lula, we saw him with Emmanuel Macron, the French president, standing in the Amazon. They announced a €1 billion green investment plan for the Amazon. But is it difficult for President Lula to try to catch up, if you like, with the problems that have been building up in the Amazon for so many years?
Yeah, you see, for fire, you have three things operating, right? One is you need material to burn, and so it's intrinsically linked with deforestation historically. Like historically, you have like deforestation explaining a lot of what happens with the fire events. So you clear cut the forest, and then when it's dry, you put fire to finish the job, and this fire goes into the forest also. So the deforestation part is going very well, like it's declining a lot, 50% decline on the first year of the government. But there is this kind of decoupling happening right now. It's so dry that the fire that is escaping to the forest is actually burning a much larger area of forest. It's very important to understand.
I'm sorry to stop you there. We're almost out of time, but really good to hear from you. Very interesting to discuss this story. Tasso Azevedo there, Brazilian forest scientist. Do stay with us here on BBC News.
The Sahara Desert, the largest desert on the planet, has recently experienced its first floods in decades, leading to the formation of stunning new lakes amid the rolling sand dunes. The rare deluge created blue lagoons surrounded by palm trees, nourishing some of the driest parts in Sahara. While the Sahara typically receives only a few inches of rain annually, the intense storm in several parts in southeast Morocco led to the floods. The storm was triggered after a low-pressure system pushed across the northwestern Sahara region. Although much of the rain fell on sparsely populated areas, claiming more than a dozen lives last month. The rain also filled lakes that are normally dry. Lake Iriki, that had been a dry one for over 50 years, was transformed into a vibrant water body. Although meteorologists have classified this weather phenomenon as an extratropical storm, They have warned that it could lead to increased evaporation and more frequent storms in the future.
A major Vatican summit of global Catholic leaders ended with a call for women to be granted more leadership roles in the church, but stopped short of calling for women to be ordained as clergy. The gathering, that included cardinals, bishops and lay people from more than 110 countries, also did not take a stand on inclusion of the LGBTQ+ community, despite discussion that it might call on the church to be more welcoming. Pope Francis called the month-long summit, known as a synod of bishops, to consider the future of the worldwide church. It was the second of two gatherings over a year and featured closed-door discussions among 368 members with voting rights, including nearly 60 women. Advocates for greater roles for women in the church had hoped the synod might call for women to serve as deacons. In its final text, the synod did not move forward on that possibility, but said there is no reason for impediment that should prevent women from carrying out leadership roles in the church. The question of women deacons, the document said, remains open, and discernment needs to continue. The synod's final document, a 52-page text approved by the Assembly late Saturday afternoon, also called for lay Catholics to be given a greater voice in the selection of bishops, and apologized several times for the untold and ongoing pain suffered by Catholics who are abused by the clergy. The text's 155 paragraphs each required a two-thirds vote of approval. The paragraph on women deacons received the most no votes, 258 against 97, but still passed. The Israeli city of Haifa has come under intense bombardment by Hezbollah. The last 1 month, there have been at least 20 airstrikes on the port city. Our next report tells you what makes Haifa an easy target for the Iran-backed group as Israel intensifies its offensive in Lebanon.
Amid the raging Israeli ground and air offensive in Lebanon, the Iran-backed Hezbollah group is hitting back at one of Israel's biggest cities. Blaring sirens, plumes of smoke covering the sky, have become a common sight in the Israeli port city of Haifa, the city with the busiest seaport and a metropolitan population of around 1 million. Haifa has been the primary target of Hezbollah's aerial attacks, especially after the killing of its chief Hassan Nasrallah last month. Part of this is due to the port city's vulnerability, located just 27 kilometers from the Lebanon border. The city presents an easy target for Hezbollah's missiles and as home to significant Israeli naval sites, several warships, energy installations, and a Shiite 7 unit. It promises many strategic gains for the militant group. Standing on the Mediterranean coast, Haifa serves as trade and commerce hub, connecting Europe, West Asia and Asia. The port of Haifa also offers quick access to Israel's major cities and industrial hubs, facilitating the efficient transport of goods and resources. With its unmissable strategic significance, the Hezbollah is focusing on hitting energy and military installations. Back-to-back rocket salvos have jolted Haifa, causing massive damage and destruction. On October 8th, Hezbollah bombarded Haifa with over 100 rockets within an hour, which left several injured. The relentless bombardment has forced the Israeli military to review its sophisticated air defense systems like the Iron Dome, Arrow and David Sling. The IDF has launched a probe to investigate why its air defense systems have failed to intercept a barrage of Hezbollah rockets.
The Iron Dome is not effective against a low-flying object like the Cornet or the Burkan rocket, which fly in a relatively low altitude. And also it's not effective against short-range objects, like the ATM, anti-tank missiles, the Kornet, or the Burkan, because it takes time for the system to get ready and to operate, and it's too short time for the system to be ready.
Haifa has been threatened by the Houthis in Yemen as well. On June 23rd, Houthis carried out joint attacks against the city and several of its ships, but the attacks haven't been confirmed by Israel. The non-stop rocket attacks have triggered panic among the locals in Haifa, with many living in fear.
I really hope it will change the future for the area, and mostly I hope it will be a turning point for the hostages, and we will see them coming home as soon as possible, alive, and hope we will end this war and live in peace here.
Haifa is living precariously on the edge, desperately waiting for a ceasefire to end the destruction. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
European leaders are calling for restraint following Israel's recent airstrikes targeting military sites in Iran. The French Foreign Ministry expressed deep concern, urging all parties to avoid further escalation amidst the rising tensions in the region. Switzerland condemned the violence, stating that hostilities must cease to prevent worsening conflicts. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz noted Israel's claim of attempting to minimize casualties during its attacks, yet emphasized that such escalatory measures must end for the prospect of peace in the Middle East. He warned Iran against further retaliation, calling for de-escalation. In response, Iran acknowledged that while the Israeli strikes resulted in limited damage, they still tragically claimed the lives of 2 soldiers. These developments come amid Israel's ongoing military operations in Gaza and its confrontation with the Iran-backed militant group Hezbollah in Lebanon. Calls for an end to the cycle of violence grow louder, highlighting the urgent need for a diplomatic solution that prioritizes peace and stability in the region.
Britain's Defence Secretary delivered a stark assessment of the UK's military readiness this week. Secretary John Healey warned UK armed forces would not be able to stop an invasion and are not ready to fight a war. Healey attributed these gaps to years of underfunding, with shortages in personnel and equipment impacting all branches, particularly the Royal Navy and the Royal Air Force. He told Politico's Power Play podcast, the UK military is operationally skilled, but cannot effectively deter or engage in high-intensity conflicts.
First of all, that the UK, in keeping with many other nations, has essentially become very skilled and ready to conduct military operations. What we've not been ready to do is to fight. And unless we're ready to fight, we're not in shape to deter. We've got to not just be capable of defending our NATO nations, but more importantly, got to be more effective in the deterrence that we can provide against any future aggression.
The Ministry of Defense echoed Healey's concerns, reporting all branches face serious personnel and equipment shortages. The Army is expected to fall below 70,000 trained soldiers, while fewer than half of the Navy's destroyers and frigates are deployable. The Army's Challenger 2 tank fleet has only 157 of 227 tanks operational. The Labour government has initiated a defense review to increase spending to NATO's recommended 2.5% of GDP. Labour leader Prime Minister Keir Starmer has criticized the hollowing out of the military under previous administrations and pledged increased funding to reinforce defense capabilities.
Our forces need to be able to innovate. We need to be able to take the new technologies and some of the lessons from Ukraine and make what we do more lethal, and therefore a stronger deterrence.
Both Healey and German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius have stressed the importance of Europe assuming greater responsibility for its own defense efforts.
China has threatened countermeasures in response to the U.S. approving a $2 billion arms sale to Taiwan. The latest package is the largest under the Biden administration and includes the NASAMS anti-air defense system. China's foreign ministry issued a statement urging the U.S. to stop arming Taiwan, saying the sale undermines peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait. China claims Taiwan as its territory and is threatening to use force to bring it under its control.